This is going to be a little review of probability, which we covered earlier in the year. Probability can be written as a fraction, a decimal, or a percent. To find probability, we first write it as a fraction, the number of favorable outcomes over the total number of outcomes. The first problem that I wrote down was let's find the probability of an even number on the spinner that I drew. Each of these sections are equal. Again, I drew it the best that I could freehand. So for this, we're going to assume that all of the sections are equal. So when you see the capital P, that means that we are finding the probability of what it says in parentheses of an even number. So I'm going to set up a fraction first. How many even numbers are on the spinner? Well, 2 is an even number, 2, 6, 8, 12, 12. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of 12. Now, what we can do next is we can turn this into a decimal by dividing the top by the bottom. When you're doing this on the practice problems that I give you, be sure to read the directions. Sometimes they'll take the answer in any form, so it's easiest just to leave it as a fraction. Sometimes they won't even make you simplify it, which makes it a lot easier. In this case, I'm going to use my calculator and I'm going to do 7 divided by 12, which is 0.583, and the 3 repeats. So again, the directions are going to tell you what to round to. If it says to round to the nearest tenth, then it would be 0.6. If it said to round to the nearest hundredth, which is the 8, then it would be 0.58 because the 3 would tell the 8 to stay the same. Now, if it says to write this as a percent, I would then just move the decimal point 2 places to the right. So my percent would be 58.3, repeating percent. I'm going to round it to the nearest tenth and be done with it. That way I have a nice, neat answer. And that's it. That's how we do probability. Remember, the capital P stands for find the probability of. Let's try another one. Let's find the probability of a number divisible by 3, which means that you can divide the number by 3 and get no remainder. So the numbers that I notice on the spinner that are divisible by 3 are 3, because 3 can go into 3. 3 can go into 6. 3 can also go into 12 and go into this 12. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers on the spinner that are divisible by 3. So I'm going to write 4 over, and we know that there are 12 equal sections on the spinner out of 12. Now, we can simplify that fraction if we want to, because it's able to be simplified. We would get 1/3. Again, most of us should have this memorized, that 1/3, we can use our calculator and do 1 divided by 3, or we can do, and we should memorize that it's 0.33, and the 3 will continue to repeat. So I'm going to throw another 3 in there, and then it repeats. And I also know that this is 33.33%. Again, this is one that we probably should have memorized by now. And that's it for simple probability. Next, we could compare these probabilities. And again, in order to compare the probabilities, I would have them at least be both turned into decimals or percents, but we can compare decimals. What is more likely to happen? Are we more likely to spin an even number on the spinner, or are we more likely to spin a number that is divisible by 3? And looking at my two answers, I have a 58.3% chance of spinning an even number and a 33.3 or a 1/3% chance of spinning a number divisible by 3. So therefore, if I were to compare these two, the probability of spinning an even number would be greater than the probability of spinning a number that is divisible by 4. Now let's use probability to predict outcomes. let's say the cafeteria wants to know how many slices of pepperoni pizza they should make for the second lunch period of the day. And they know that during the first lunch period, 45 out of the 175 kids that went to lunch had pepperoni pizza. And let's say that was the first lunch period. And in the second lunch period, we're trying to figure out how many pieces do we think we have to make. If the second lunch period has a little bit more students in it, the second lunch period has 225 students. We want to know how many slices of pepperoni should they plan on selling. So what I would do is I would set up a proportion, or start out with a fraction for the first one. So 45 out of 175 would be my first fraction, and that's going to equal what number out of 225? And then if we remember way back when we were solving proportions, to solve a proportion, we cross multiply the numbers that are diagonally across from each other, and then we divide by the number that's diagonally across from the variable. Multiply and then divide, no matter how we set up the proportion. So let me do that. I did 45 times 225, and then I divided my answer by 175, and I got 57.85, and it keeps going. So I'm going to round that up to 58. And it's that simple. So again, my original answer was 58. I should probably, no, let me change this for you. My original answer, just so you can see this for yourself, was 57.857, and it kept going. But I'm going to round it to a whole number of slices of pizza. So the 8 tells the 7 to go up. So I'm going to round it to 58 slices of pizza. So all you do is set up a proportion, cross multiply, and divide. Let's look at another example. Let's say I have an 8-sided die. And of course, an 8-sided die has 8 sides, numbered 1 to 8. I'm going to roll that die 2,000 times. Okay. How many 7s should be rolled if I roll the die 2,000 times? So I'm going to again start with a proportion. Okay. How many 7s are on an 8-sided die? 1 out of 8. So if I rolled the die 8 times, the 7 should show up once. And again, this is what should happen. When you actually do the experiment, it may not exactly happen. Okay, let's set that equal to x, because we don't know how many we're going to roll out of 2,000. So again, what do? We cross multiply. 1 times 2,000 is 2,000. And then we divide 2,000 by 8 to get the answer of, a little division sign there for you, x equals 250. So we would expect it to land on the number 7 250 times. So that's all you do. You write the fraction and you set it equal to another fraction, set up your proportion, cross multiply and divide. Good luck.